Welcome back to the podcast. Alcohol. You might want to rethink it. It is something that we all can relate to.
Oh, yeah.
One way or another.
We're just these guys. We got Pastor Mike.
We got Dr. Parker.
And welcome back to the show.
One more time, everybody. Yeah. You ever heard of the band, the Bare Naked Ladies?
For some reason, I want to say yes.
Yeah. They haven't been around for a minute. They had a song that says, I love you more than I did the week before I discovered alcohol. I just thought that was a catchy line. But alcohol.
There's some truth to that.
Yeah, I suppose there would be. So I want to, before we get launched into this.
But yeah, I was going to say, you had a...
Yeah, I want to share
something that brought all this together.
Yeah, you know, every now and then you just have to kind of do a little review and ask yourself, is it worth what I'm doing? Is this worth what we are doing?
Oh, you're talking about
the podcast. Is this time well spent?
Mm-hmm.
And you tend to kind of break it down to the least denominator. And if it just helps one person, well, I think we can be confident that it's at least helping one person. And I had some proof brought to me the other day. It was actually after one of the services at church. And this gentleman comes up to me, and I'm not going to use his name. He knows who he is, but I'm going to share something that he shared with me, and I didn't get permission to to share this, so I'm not going to use his name.
Yeah.
But he told me, he said, right about the time that you guys started the podcast, he said, I was really struggling with a lot of things. And I was having issues, making issues really with my family. And one of the things that I was really struggling with at the time, it was alcohol. And it was just, I was not in a good place.
Right.
And he said, but I've spent a lot of time working on myself. I've been listening to the podcast regularly. I have really taken it in, and it has helped me a tremendous amount. He said, I'm different now than I was then.
That is great.
It's huge. And then here's what he said, which is really cool. And he said, and I have actually been able to help other people. So he said, you guys are helping more people than you realize.
Wow.
And that, it just gave me goosebumps. I really so appreciated, so often we will think nice things, but we don't take the time to say the nice things.
Yeah.
And so thank you very much for doing that. And it's something that I am always wanting to do more of, is to, when I'm thinking these thoughts, share them. Take the time to share them. And so it's awesome. So kudos, Doc. All the time that you put into the editing and everything that takes, it's very, very much worth it. And thank you very much. So, yeah, alcohol. We're going to talk about, and I want to just give a disclaimer right now. I'm only speaking for myself.
Okay.
I have never in my life been a teetotaler except for when it would have been 15 years and younger. Ever since I hit junior high, alcohol has been a part of my life.
Sure.
I mean, all the way. I can't find, I guarantee you, not a single one of my classmates can we find a photograph of any place that we were together where there wasn't a 12-pack under our arms. we just always a part of the picture. And so even so into adulthood, Now it's waned over the years. I can't take it as much. I can't handle my alcohol. But it is something that I have been thinking a lot about lately. And we were discussing just different topics, and this one came up. And the reality is that it has hit my family very personally on both sides. My dad's side as well as my mom's side, there's alcoholism. Just recently, we lost one of our cousins, and she was in her 30s.
Wow.
To alcoholism.
That's a shame.
And I got to thinking, though, that I want to make sure that everybody understands that this is an individual. We're not calling for the Prohibition Act of 2024. This is an individual decision. For everybody. But I think a realistic view of it is healthy. There's no guarantees, no matter how you live your life. There's no guarantees. We need to be living for today. Today is the only day that is promised. Here's the interesting part of this. He was 62 years old. And when he died, Doc, he was about 40 yards from where we stand. He was the next door neighbor.
Really?
Now, this was 2013.
Yeah.
Were you living here then?
No.
But it was the house next door.
Wow.
Right next door.
And he died right next door?
Right there, yeah.
Wow.
In one of the bedrooms.
Gives me
They had
chills.
hospice there with him. So anyway, I tell that because this is a very personal subject for me. And it has me really rethinking. Doing some research on this has me rethinking, because I think the big picture here that we're finding is that literally no level of alcohol is beneficial.
And that's what the research has been showing and does show. And lately there's been a few headlines where that's popped up. There's been a lot of myths about alcohol over the years that people, and we can relate to those because, in the 50s, they would have commercials where doctors were saying, hey, smoke Pall Mall, they're good for your health.
Right.
I mean, there have been these myths floating around about all of this stuff, but alcohol, I want to say the FDIC,
Right.
the government,
Yeah.
the National Institute of Health, it's listed. It is a carcinogen.
Mm-hmm.
It is a toxin, and that we are choosing to ingest. So, what we talk about a lot of times when it comes to use of substances is not, like you mentioned, your uncle died of bladder cancer and he never drank or smoked.
Yeah.
But so it's not a guarantee that you will or will not be healthy if you do or do not drink, but we talk about risk factors and risk levels. And I think there's been some misunderstanding out there into what the language actually means when you do catch a news headline on the radio or something. So people will say, here's something, and either say, well, that's not me, because they don't understand the terminology, or they will hear something that says alcohol is good for you. Oh, see, look.
Right.
And so now I'm going to go drink my 12-pack.
Right. Yeah.
But that's where the myths have come in. And part of the problem is ours in terms of the field of psychology and published research journal articles. We always talk about real research. And by real research, what we're talking about is somebody at an institution or agency or a university did research that follows, proper research guidelines, and then they submit that article to a refereed journal. And by referee, I mean there's a journal, but they have basically editors. And so they have other university professors and, smart people on the staff. Then when you submit your research to them, it then goes to one of these other experts in the field who review your research and make determinations about whether you followed proper guidelines, whether you crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's, and if this is a worthy article to be published in their journal. Mm-hmm. It may be reviewed by multiple people, and then there may be some arguing back and forth and some editing and some revisions of things before it actually finally gets published. So here's where two problems tend to come in. The bias of significance. And what that means is if I do research on a topic and I find no significant results, well, it's boring. Who wants to read that?
Sure. Yeah.
So is there a relationship between hydrogenated water and cancer? Mm-hmm. And I do all this really good research, follow all the proper protocols, and I find no relationship.
Yeah.
Now, scientifically, what that means, it doesn't say there isn't one.
Sure.
It's saying I didn't find one.
Yeah.
And so I do all this research, and the results are, we could not conclude that there was a relationship between hydrogen-infused water and cancer.
Doesn't make a real good article.
And so the journals themselves, everybody's in this publish or perish mode. And so the journals themselves are looking for something significant. Mm-hmm. They're looking for something interesting and intriguing that will get people to read their article and pass the article around. So research that's finding non-significant results tend to go by the wayside. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of dissertation work that is legitimate quality research, but the students don't ever pursue getting it published, or they just get the dissertation done and that's it. And there's a lot of non-significant results that land in those dissertation abstracts because either one, the student doesn't pursue it, or two, they did pursue it and they're like, yes, not significant. We're not interested in that. And so there's an entire body of research out there that we never hear about or look at. So that's the first problem, is what the journals are actually publishing. They're looking for some spicy headlines to, Then the second is the news media. So one, we don't hear a lot in the news media about topics like this because they're, clickbait. They want, to sell their television station, the radio station. And so they too want sexy, fancy headlines. So now how does that research get disseminated down to, Joe Sixpack? Well, it's got to be on the AM radio station at the time he's driving to work, and that 30-second blurb for him to hear it, if he hears it. And then whatever is said, he's got to kind of digest all of that. And then in that quick decision, when they say binge drinking is, related to, significant increase in death. Well, I'm not a binge drinker, so turn the radio off. Or, research has found 2 glasses of wine a night is actually healthy for the heart. Hey, see that? Drinking's good for your heart. I'm actually doing cardiovascular work here.
Yeah.
But all these are myths, and they get propagated by these two phenomena here, the non-significant bias or significance bias, and the media not, wanting to put stuff out there that's not going to increase their viewership. And so these myths have perpetuated.
Yeah.
And then in the research themselves, even ones that find significant results, when we go back in and look at the research, are they misinterpreting the data? So, for example, the myth about 1 to 2 glasses of wine every night improves your heart. Mm-hmm. Is it the wine? How many people do you know who drink wine? And how many people do you know who drink, wine 1 to 2 glasses a night? And so the wine drinker is a different person than the beer drinker, who is a different person than the whiskey drinker. Mm-hmm. And so wine people tend to be more affluent. They have better education. They have easier jobs on their body. They're not out digging ditches every day. They're working in offices.
Right.
Wine drinkers tend to have, more sensitive palates. So they enjoy a greater variety of foods and olive oils and spices and, cumin. So their diet is different than most Americans, and their lifestyle is different than most Americans. But we're attributing the improvement we're attributing their heart health as being better than Joe Sixpack because of the wine? No. And so this is, we run into what we call confounding variables, that we're pointing to this variable when in actuality that variable may also be the result of their lifestyle.
Sure.
If I have pretentious lifestyle, and I show up at a dinner party, am I going to hammer back Pabst Blue Ribbon in front of my boss, or am I going to get a glass of wine so I can look sophisticated? So
choke it down.
So there's a lot of problems in the research that make this a confusing topic. And there was a recent study, and this is interesting. I'm trying not to go into the weeds on all of this. If you were looking for a deep dive into scientific research into alcohol use, this ain't the place. But I'll point you in that direction that it's out there. But a news article did make the headlines, and this is about a meta-analysis of alcohol research. And so what a meta-analysis is they gather all the research they can. So the research you did at Wichita State University, the research Johnny did over at New York, the research that was done in California, and Australia, and Romania, they pull all of that together, hundreds of articles, hundreds of research articles, and then they analyze the entire thing. Mm-hmm. And that's very, very useful when they can do it. Now, it's tedious and it's hard work, but when they do it, it's much more insightful. And so imagine, this is research. Research relies on sampling. For my research to be useful to the world, I have to be able to get subjects that represent the world. But 90% of our research is done at universities with 18 to 19-year-old kids.
Yeah.
So when I do research at Wichita State University with students who are largely from Kansas and the Midwest, is that research really going to translate and be applicable to students in New York?
Yeah.
And the research on students in New York, is that going to be applicable to the research or to the students in Kansas and Nebraska? So we have, sampling issues, sampling errors. There's a lot of stuff that goes into making research very boring, mundane, and questionable at times. But we need to, approach this stuff with, take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
We need to really understand how the research findings came about before we put a lot of weight into them or not. And so that's a problem that meta-analysis eliminates, because they get research from everywhere and they pull it together. And these are some of the headline findings from this meta-analysis. And drinking a glass of wine a day will not help you live longer, according to a new analysis of alcohol research that debunks a long-standing belief about the possible health benefits of drinking alcohol moderately. It's a myth. The research does not show it is helpful, but more importantly than not showing it isn't helpful, the research actually shows the opposite.
Well, the good news is I can go ahead and just scratch off the idea of building a wine cellar in my basement.
It found not only no significant health benefits, but also that drinking a daily serving of alcohol of less than 1 ounce for women and 1.5 ounces for men increased the risk of death. Teetotaler, it increases the risk of death. The new analysis found that people who drank more than 2 ounces of alcohol a day had the highest risk of death, about 35% higher than people who drank more moderately. So it's way higher for people who don't drink at all. The risk of death was also found to be greater for women, with a 61% increased risk for women who drink more than 2 ounces of alcohol per day. Women are more susceptible to alcohol-related heart disease than men. Alcohol misuse produces brain damage more quickly in men and women than men. Alcohol produces brain damage, period, but more so for women. Women may be more susceptible to alcohol-related blackouts, gaps in memory. Women who regularly misuse alcohol are more likely than men to develop alcoholic hepatitis, a potentially deadly condition. Even casual drinkers face a greater risk of cancer liver cancer, throat cancer, colon cancer, head and neck cancers, breast cancer. So Department of Health and Human Services lists alcohol as a known carcinogen. So just in short order, you can go Google, but look for the actual research article, not just headlines and things, and dig in there. There is zero benefit to drinking alcohol, and there is an increase in the risk of dying from something earlier than expected, mid-age, midlife, brain damage, heart damage, liver damage, and these things tend to cascade. Mm-hmm. And so the brain damage can lead to other issues. The heart damage can lead to other issues. And we're not even talking lifestyle.
Sure.
We're not even talking DUIs, marital problems, like your...
Yeah, mental.
That
it leads to, it contributes to the increase of depression.
Anxiety.
So the big question is, even to have a drink a day, is it really beneficial? And if you feel like it is beneficial, okay, so why is that? What is the real reason that you're turning to a beer or a glass of wine? Is it really just to relax? Because study actually says that it goes the other direction, mm-hmm. that it contributes to depression, that it contributes to anxiety, that it contributes to stress. And so I think it's a good idea for all of us to just do a checkup from the neck up.
Now, here's another myth that I think is really important for the listener to hear, if they're still with us. They're dogging on alcohol. Click.
Yeah. Nah, I suspect.
And like you mentioned, we're not coming from a place of Bible-thumping Christian,
right.
Let's banish alcohol.
Right.
I was a sailor. It was part of the job description to drink, mm-hmm. And I was good at it.
Yeah.
I got a merit badge.
You were a Navy SEAL on alcohol.
But what we don't understand is what all these terms mean. And so I will hear people say, well, I don't drink that much, so I don't have a problem. Or, they were talking about binge drinking. I don't binge drink. Mm-hmm. I'm not a heavy drinker. I only drink one or two a couple times a week. Well, when you hear those terms, they're not just making them up out of thin air.
Right.
So what is the definition of these terms that you're hearing that you're saying is not you? So, and I'm not going to even, I was going to what do you think a heavy drinker is?
You can ask me.
Okay. What do you think a heavy drinker is?
To me, a heavy drinker is someone who drinks 4 to 6 beers a day. That's always been my definition of a heavy drinker. And I know it's way less than that by the actual definition.
And I've had people tell me, I have, 3 or 4 after work. Mm-hmm. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I'm not a heavy drinker.
Sure.
I just have 3 or 4 after work. Mm-hmm. The textbook definition of heavy drinker. So when they talk on the radio or the news about heavy drinkers, that category has a definition.
Right.
And it's not your definition of a heavy drinker. It's not my definition. It's an actual literal term. Heavy drinkers in research are defined for men as 15 drinks or more per week. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean 2 a day, you're a heavy drinker. If you're doing, 1 or 2 every other day, and then on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm only drinking on the weekend.
And it's the number. It's not the 15 or more in a 1 week period. You're mm-hmm. in the category of heavy drinkers. For women, 8. 8 or more drinks in a 1 week period, you fall into the heavy drinker category.
Yeah.
The other thing that puts somebody in the heavy drinker category, I'm not drinking every day. 1 or more episodes of binge drinking in a week. Well, that's not me, Doc. I don't binge drink. But Yeah, Monday through Friday, I don't drink. Saturday, I drink because I know I got Sunday to recover and I get back to work on Monday and I'm doing fine. So what's the definition of binge drinking? Binge drinking, by definition, when the research is referring to binge drinking, 4 to 5 drinks for men in a 2-hour period. Yeah. For me, when I was, younger and in the Navy, 4 to 5 drinks, that was lunch.
That's lightweight.
Yeah. How much did you drink last night? 4 or 5. And we had lightweight. That's not what we said, but lightweight.
Mm-hmm.
Or to 0.08% blood alcohol content in a 2-hour period. 0.08. 4 to 5 drinks in a 2-hour window or to 0.08 is defined as binge drinking. That's the actual definition. If you were thinking beyond that, keep that in mind here for these next set of statistics. Because according to the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System, half of U.S. adults report drinking alcohol in the last 30 days. Half. So half don't. Half have had a drink of some kind. During the 2021, here we go. 17% of adults binge drink. 17% have 4 to 5 beers, 4 to 5 drinks or more in one setting. 17%. 4 to 5 drinks in one setting. And 7% report being heavy drinkers. That fit the definition of heavy drinking. So
that's 24%. You add those two together. That's why you don't see very many.
When those categories cross, who binge drinks, heavy drinkers. So 7% are heavy drinkers, 17% of people have binge drinked.
So let's just say 17%.
17%.
That's why you don't see very many liquor stores closing. If you got 17% of the market, you're doing pretty good.
But my question for people is look at your friend group, look at the people you're hanging out with. Which category do they fall into? The 17%, the 7%, or the 83 to 90% who don't misuse alcohol, don't get drunk, don't hammer themselves, don't. Which category are you in? And look around. I mean, that's where the myth forms. Is we're like, everybody drinks. All my friends drink. Hey, when I go out, everybody's drinking. That's 17% of the population you're dealing with. The other 80% out there are doing other things. They're enjoying life other ways.
Well, let me just tell you right now, not in Mulvane. And those numbers have steadily, I think it started out when I was, 18 at 100%. 100% of us were binge drinking. And then over the years, it's come down. But yeah, I don't mean to make light of all this. But
no, it's amazing. And when I was younger, I was kind of guilty of the same thing. When I was in the Navy, I got in trouble for something alcohol related, so I had to get assessed. And they asked me a couple of questions that still stick out in my head because I was so naive and such a liar. And they knew I was lying. That was the funny part, is I thought I was slick. But they said, "Why do you drink?" Oh, well, that's a stupid question.
Yeah,
because it's good for my hair.
Yeah.
Why do you drink? Is this a trick question? I was really confused. To get drunk? Is that the right answer? That's why I drink. And I said, okay, well, how many drinks does it take you to get drunk? And I thought, 20, 18, 20, I don't know, not quite a case. But I better lie.
Yeah.
8. and our eyes raised.
Yeah.
It takes you 8 beers to get drunk. And I'm thinking,
Like that's a big number.
right. That's not even the real number.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, we have these distorted beliefs about drinking based on the group we hang out with and what we see in our window of opportunity when we're out in the public. But the reality is that's not reality.
Yeah. Well, I've never heard any stories that ended up in a positive way that started with, I was drinking the other day. I've never heard any marriages that were described as really healthy that started out with, I was hanging out at the bar the other day. You know, it just doesn't typically lead to anything positive. And so the thing that hopefully folks are hearing today is it just might be time to just check yourself and say, okay, why do I drink? Well, no matter whatever level you're at, however much it is you're drinking, ask yourself why. And be honest with yourself. That's the main thing. Be honest with yourself. And then if you need help, there's help out there. You can absolutely get free from.
Yeah, there's just Google help, or if you want to get into our description, there's 800 numbers and links in there. But just Google it.
Yep.
You'll find a million bit of resources. And when you're asking the questions of yourself about drinking, I strongly encourage you to ask positive questions, not negative questions.
That's good.
How does it help me? How does this benefit my life?
Yeah.
How does this make my life better? How does this improve my relationship with my spouse? How does this improve my relationship with my God? Because what a lot of people, they ask the opposite questions. What is it hurting?
Sure.
I don't see any problems. They're asking negative questions. Why shouldn't I?
Right.
And then their mind is programmed to look for negative reasons they have experienced, and your own personal bias is going to come in. Why? I shouldn't have to stop. I'm not hurting anybody. I stay at home. I do this. I do that. I'm not out driving, killing little kids and running over kittens. They're looking for negative reasons to stop as opposed to looking for positive reasons. How is this helping you? How is this improving your life? How does this improve your health? It doesn't improve your health. That's a myth.
Yep.
It increases your risk of death. It increases your risk of cancer, increases risk of heart disease, mental health, brain damage. It is a carcinogen. So think about it.
Think about it. Thank you, Doc. It was good. And here's to the best day of our lives.
Today.
Right here.
Today's the best day of our life.
Today, somebody is going to get free.
Just these guys, you know?
Awesome. Thank you, Doc. We got Dr. Parker in the house.
Thank you for bringing that in, Mike. We'll catch you guys next week.
Have an awesome week.